after Jesus Christ's birth, that Mary and Joseph took him to Jerusalem to be presented before the Lord and to offer a sacrifice. You see, all Jewish families did this. In fact, it was a requirement. Because of God's promise that the firstborn of heaven will be given to sinners, all of the firstborn Hebrews often dedicated their sons in the temple. What an amazing sight. I was there now. I was not a believer. My mother was. But as I stood back there in the temple, I could tell that these priests and teachers had no idea of the child that they were handling. I watched as the priest took the baby Jesus, and granted, they were all caught up in riches and honor. And if you looked at Mary and Joseph, you could tell that they weren't rich folk. They were simply Galileans. And since they were not of large stature, the priests were not very particular about handling this child. So they got the child, and the priest kind of quickly held the child up and then wrote Jesus, the firstborn. And I looked as though that these priests should have known who this child was, because there were prophecies that told them so. And I wasn't a believer, so I was saying, man, I don't even know why these folk are here. They were talking about this promised Messiah and everything. But all of a sudden, there was this old man that came in. His name was Simeon. And when he came in, he was lit up. Now he wasn't drunk, but he was lit up in his face. Amen. He had the glory of God all over him. Amen. And you could tell that he had been with God. And as he approached Mary and Joseph, he walked over to them very carefully. And he reached out to grab the baby Jesus. And Mary handed the child to him. And I figured, I said, well, this must be the child's grandfather or something like this. And all of a sudden, he lifted the child up. Y'all seen the Lion King? It wasn't simple. He held the child up and he said, "Sovereign God, mine eyes have seen your salvation." And I found out later that Simeon was promised that he would see the Messiah before he died. And so now I was beginning to say, okay, now I still wasn't convinced, but he told her, he said, listen, this child will be the cause of many, the rise and fall of many in Israel. And also he will create contention among a lot of folk, and he will reveal their true purpose. This child. And he said, thank you for allowing me to lay my eyes on this child. And I was looking, I was like, man, he looked like a regular old baby to me. But he was just, and when he walked out, he was just full of joy and happiness. And I thought it was all over. I said, well, ain't too many folk crazy like this old man and everything. And all of a sudden, again, in comes Anna. She was a prophet, and she confirmed everything that Simeon was saying. And she said she was thankful that God had allowed her to see this promised Messiah. Now these two humble servants, they studied the prophecies and they opened their hearts to God. Now mind you, these were the same prophecies that the priests and the teachers had, and they had not a clue. Their eyes were closed to the miracle that was happening right before them. So we serve a good God, and He will reveal to us. And as Simeon handed the child back to Mary, she took the child back, and Mary remembered the words of the shepherds. And she remembered the prophecies that Simeon had told her about. And then it took her back to the words of Isaiah. Unto us a child is born. Unto us a child is given. And the government will be upon his shoulder. And he shall be called Wonderful. Counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father,